Our story begins behind the red shields of the Naboo melting pit, the disposal station of the plasma refinery residue, as Jedi Padawan Obi Wan Kenobi is stuck behind the final shield, watching helplessly as Qui Gon and Darth Maul move across the small room. It was apparent to Obi Wan that Qui Gon was losing speed while Maul was preparing to finish this, and Obi Wan felt something unfamiliar inside of him. It was a feeling he was not supposed to have as a Jedi, and so, in order to quell these feelings, Obi-Wan did what his master just did. He dropped down to his knees, and he closed his eyes, trying to find a calm peace in meditation. But it was not easy. Time began to move in slow motion for Obi-Wan. He felt like a caged animal, waiting helplessly behind this shield, and he was furious at himself for getting trapped so far behind the duel. And he was also furious with Qui-Gon for letting this happen, for not staying back and waiting. But behind that fury was a fear that Obi-Wan never felt before. Against any other opponent, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan would have swiftly dealt with the threat. But this Zabrak warrior was dangerous, well-trained, and unlike anything they've ever faced. And despite having his eyes closed, Obi-Wan could feel the weariness in Qui-Gon's shoulders and his back as the fight continued. Qui-Gon was one of the best swordsmen in the Order, Obi-Wan thought, but he was growing old, far older than this Sith. And suddenly, Obi-Wan's patience was running out, even in meditation. He hissed the word "hurry" at the shielded door, trying to urge it open. And then, as Obi-Wan clenched his fists in fear and fury, he had a vision. It was just moments in the future, as Obi-Wan watched Maul stab Qui-Gon with his lightsaber, then use the Force to push Obi-Wan over the edge. And that was where the vision ended. A vision from the dark side. And now Obi-Wan was seething with rage. He would not let this vision come true, and he was consumed by a red haze of rage and frustration. And as Obi-Wan watched Maul parry the same move that he saw in his vision to begin the killing sequence, Obi-Wan screamed out with this rage, pointing his hands into the ceiling and pulling down with durasteel around him with everything he had. The sudden burst of power and sound caused Maul to be distracted, and as he spun around, he was only able to cut across Qui-Gon's side. The Jedi Master fell to the floor, wounded, not at all fatal, and his pained eyes looked forward to the crushed durasteel as ruptured pipes were hissing with steam, and alarms were beginning to go off. The heavy dust and steam blinded his view, and Darth Maul peered into the steam with caution, until a blue lightsaber ignited from inside of the haze. And then Obi-Wan ran forward with such fury and power that he almost knocked both of them down the melting pit. But Kenobi spun his blade around, locked sabers with the Sith, and he stared deep into the Sith's yellow eyes. And as Maul looked into Obi-Wan's eyes, there was something new in them, something powerful. And with another scream of sudden power, Obi-Wan spun around. He cleaved through Maul's double-bladed lightsaber, and both ends of it were sent over the edge of the pit. Maul bared his teeth in rage, pushed out at Obi-Wan, and trying to throw him backwards. But Obi-Wan put up his hands in forced defense, only being pushed back one step, and then he reached out his own hands. Maul's feet were lifted off the floor. He was grabbing at his own neck, as Kenobi reached out in a forced choke, slowly closing his fist. Had Maul expected this outburst, then he would have been able to fight it, and most likely defeat Kenobi, as he got overwhelmed by the dark side. But this turn caught Maul completely off guard. And now, he was at the mercy of this Jedi. Qui-Gon was slouched against the wall with a deep wound in his side, and as Obi-Wan embraced this darkness, Qui-Gon slowly got to his feet, telling Obi-Wan to stop it, but Obi-Wan did not hear him. He was lost in the red haze, and he finished it, snapping Maul's neck, and the Sith Lord was dropped lifelessly down the melting pit. And as Qui-Gon watched the Zabrak fall forever down the pit, he felt a pit forming in his stomach as he looked upon his student. Obi-Wan was breathing heavily. He knew what he just did was wrong. He knew he should apologize to Qui-Gon for going against his teachings. But instead he just turned away, saying they should go make sure the rest of Naboo is safe. Qui-Gon told Obi-Wan that this was a mistake. He should not have allowed the dark side to use him like this. But Obi-Wan snapped back, saying they were losing. They were going to die. Obi-Wan told Qui-Gon that the Force showed him a vision of both of them dying, so he acted. Simple as that. And now Anakin will have a master. Isn't that what Qui-Gon wanted? And Qui-Gon began to sense that there was much more building up inside of Obi-Wan's mind than he was letting on. So, he walked out of the room behind Obi-Wan, and he did not say much more for now. And in the end, young Anakin would destroy the Trade Federation capital ship, forcing every single battle droid to be shut down. And the squad, led by Queen Amidala and Captain Panaka, would capture Gunray, ending his occupation once and for all. The Naboo celebrations would be grand, and Qui-Gon would join the rest of the heroic party on the main stage, as Boss Nass lifted up the globe of peace. Qui-Gon smiled as he looked around, but when his eyes fell on Obi-Wan, the young Jedi was looking down, and Qui-Gon knew what he was feeling. Obi-Wan had let go of the dark side, but coming down from it was not easy, and there were now two paths in front of Obi-Wan. Go back to the darkness that calls to him, the darkness that feels so right, or stay down the path of the Jedi that Qui-Gon has guided him on. But Qui-Gon was conflicted on how to handle this. If he were to go to the Jedi Council and tell them that Obi-Wan embraced the dark side, they might think Qui-Gon is incapable of teaching someone like Anakin, who is already showing signs of the dark side. Qui-Gon needed someone who understood what it was like to feel the dark, someone that he trusted. So, after the Naboo celebrations, Qui-Gon would give Obi-Wan a choice. He can either confess to the Council what he has done, or he can go to Sereno and learn from Dooku how to acknowledge the dark side without ever actually embracing it. Qui-Gon told Obi-Wan that Dooku was one of the most powerful Jedi that he ever knew. There were moments when Qui-Gon saw Dooku touch the dark side, but he always came out in the light. He told Obi-Wan why Dooku left the Order for his home world and family name after having some disagreements with the Council. And Qui-Gon also thought it would be good for Obi-Wan to be less rigid overall, as Qui-Gon believed that the Council boxing Obi-Wan and other Jedi into such rigid walls actually made them more susceptible to the darkness. The tighter they close their grip, the more the darkness will slip out, as the Shroud of the Sith is unveiled to the galaxy. Before the Sith began to emerge, this mindset was fine. There was not much darkness to fall into, but these were unprecedented times, and Obi-Wan would choose to go to Sereno, as Dooku told Qui-Gon that he was willing to help the young Kenobi. The Council was told by Qui-Gon that Obi-Wan was going on a spiritual journey for his trials, set forth for him by Qui-Gon, and there was no timetable for it. The Council accepted this, as they had a lot going on, and Obi-Wan was rather disappointed himself. He was on the verge of becoming a Jedi Knight. He knew he was starting a long path forward to finding himself again, but there was a voice deep inside of his mind, telling him that Qui-Gon and the Jedi are wrong. If he did not use the dark side, then Maul would have killed them both. Perhaps he would have captured Anakin and trained him in the ways of the Sith. Obi-Wan used the dark side for good. What was so wrong with that? The voice asked. But Obi-Wan knew the path into the dark side was one of death and despair. And on Sereno, as Obi-Wan's ship entered the atmosphere, Dooku considered the path before him. Just days ago, he met with Darth Sidious in the Coruscant lair after a disturbance in the Force was felt. They knew Maul was dead, and something shifted within Obi-Wan Kenobi, and in this meeting, Dooku had killed Jedi Master Yaddle, who followed him to the lair, cementing himself as the true apprentice to the Sith, especially without Maul. And now, an opportunity was being presented to Dooku. As the apprentice to Darth Sidious, he knew everything. He knew about the Clone Army, the Droid Army, the forming Separatist Alliance, the Sith Lord in control of the Republic, and much more. Dooku wanted to follow Sidious's plan. He believed in it, but he was not a lifelong Sith like Palpatine or Maul. He was a Jedi who became disillusioned with the Senate and the Council until he did fall to the dark. Yes, he had much in common with Palpatine, but the allure of an apprentice in his own Jedi lineage was intriguing, and he wondered if perhaps there was another way, not exactly the way of the Sith, but of a dark Jedi Order that can fix the broken galaxy. And so Dooku would help Obi-Wan. For many hours, Dooku and Kenobi spoke about the Force, about all of its aspects, until finally they got to what happened on Naboo. Obi-Wan told Dooku about the duel with Maul, about how he became separated from Qui-Gon. He told Dooku about his meditations in battle, and about the call that he felt from the Force, as if it were begging him to be let in. Dooku told Obi-Wan that it was indeed the dark side trying to slither its way into his mind, and this was where Obi-Wan became confused. The dark side showed him a vision of him and Qui-Gon losing. So he acted on this vision, and in the end, the Jedi emerged victorious, even if the victory came in a rather savage way. Obi-Wan was having trouble accepting that anything he did was truly wrong. Dooku would tell Obi-Wan to walk with him, and they began walking around the outside of the castle and into the Sereno forests. And Dooku said that the Force is in chaos right now. The Sith are back, whether the Jedi Council wants to acknowledge it or not. The overall truth of the Force is not as simple as light or dark, as Obi-Wan now knows. So, Dooku told Obi-Wan that he may be gifted with the ability to balance the light and the dark, as he is, and as Qui-Gon may be, and as Qui-Gon's new student, Anakin, someday will be. Qui-Gon told Obi-Wan that their lineage of Jedi can be powerful. They can help to reshape and fix this broken galaxy. Or they can be corrupted by the Sith until there is no light left within them. So, naturally, Obi-Wan asked how they could do this. Dooku said it is quite simple. They can eradicate the Sith and take their place, not as Sith nor as Jedi, but as something in between. Dooku told Obi-Wan that his ability to use the dark side for good is valuable, and he began to unravel the full truth. Dooku asked Obi-Wan, "What if I told you that the Republic was now under the control of the Dark Lord of the Sith?" Obi-Wan stopped in his tracks. He wanted to say that this was impossible, that the Jedi would be aware of it. But was that true? He began to realize the Jedi were blind to the rise of the Sith. So instead, he asked Dooku how he knew this. And Dooku, now deep in the woods, ignited a red lightsaber, saying that Sidious came to him for help. He told him everything. And Dooku looked at Obi-Wan with a mix of seriousness and despair, as if he was seeing a way out of the necessary nightmare of the Sith, and he told Obi-Wan to join him, as only together can they destroy Darth Sidious. Obi-Wan knew what he should say. He knew what Qui-Gon would say. He should tell Dooku that he would never join him in this path. But Obi-Wan was seeing the truth, and so he would kneel down in front of Dooku, proclaiming his loyalty to him. And then, a couple years later, Qui-Gon and Anakin would be standing inside of one of the lower training chambers of the Jedi Temple, as the young boy spun his green training blade before striking at a hovering training droid. Anakin was growing quickly, both physically and within the Force, and Qui-Gon trained him differently from other students. He did not tell Anakin to forget his mother or bury his fear for her. Instead, he taught him to understand those feelings without allowing them to control him. The Council did not fully agree with Qui-Gon's approach, but they could not deny Anakin's progress, and they often visited the newly freed Shmi Skywalker with the Lars family on Tatooine. Anakin's connection to the Force was unlike any other Jedi at his age. When Qui-Gon ended today's session, they walked through the temple together, feeling the currents of the Force, and as they began their daily studies in the archives, Anakin saw the statue of Dooku's head, a member of the Lost 20, and he asked Qui-Gon about him, since Dooku was once his master, and he also asked about Obi-Wan. Qui-Gon told Anakin that Kenobi had taken a different path. He was still a Jedi, but he'd chosen to begin his training again, beneath Dooku, so he could better understand himself and the Force. Of course, the Council was under the impression that Kenobi was on a long spiritual retreat, but Qui-Gon and Anakin knew the truth, and Obi-Wan seemed well in his new journey to learn how to acknowledge his darkness without embracing it. But in reality, far away on Sereno, Obi-Wan's training looked nothing like Anakin's. Today, after a couple years, he and Dooku stood across from another, inside of a stone chamber beneath the castle, both holding red lightsabers. Dooku would attack first, but Obi-Wan blocked the strike, drove him backwards with a powerful series of strikes, and Obi-Wan was faster, more aggressive than he ever had been, and Obi-Wan learned to summon the darkness without immediately losing himself inside of it. He thought about his dark visions, the corruption of the Senate, and the Jedi remaining blind, while the Sith moved around them. His anger strengthened him, and with a strike, he knocked Dooku's weapon away, beating him for the first time in a sparring match. Obi-Wan stopped his blade beside Dooku's neck, and Dooku told him they were nearly ready to overthrow Darth Sidious. And so, as the days did indeed go by, they did plan to overthrow Darth Sidious. Palpatine did not know that Kenobi was training with Dooku. It was a secret to everyone except for Qui-Gon and Anakin, though even they did not know the full truth. Dooku and Obi-Wan told themselves they were using the dark side for the good of the galaxy, but the darkness was changing them. It always would, no matter how much they tried to tell themselves they were in full control of it. And soon, on Naboo, Chancellor Palpatine returned to his homeworld for the Festival of Light celebration, standing before thousands outside of Theed Palace as glowing lanterns rose into the sky. He spoke about the strength of Naboo and the peace held together by the Republic. Queen Jamila, Senator Amidala, and Captain Panaka stood behind him while the people cheered. And after the speech, he would travel alone to his old family estate beyond Theed to get away from these celebrations for a bit. But there was something else. He knew someone was following him, and he wanted to find out who. And as the doors closed behind him in this estate, Palpatine turned towards the entrance hall. Someone was here. Dooku would step out from the shadows and ignite his red blade, followed by Obi-Wan and his own red blade. Palpatine had long expected Dooku to try and betray him. This would be how he shows Dooku the true power of the dark side, and a lightsaber would fly out from his sleeve as he launched himself at Dooku with a sinister laugh. He struck at Dooku's chest, spun beneath defensive strikes, and twisted around as Obi-Wan attacked from behind to block his blade and throw Kenobi through a wooden table. Dooku began cutting toward Palpatine's hands, trying to stop the Sith Lord from extending outward, while Obi-Wan rose, attacking with greater power as they forced Sidious through the doors and into the central courtyard, where Obi-Wan kicked him down the stone steps. The two of them chased after Sidious, but at the bottom of the stairs, Sidious threw his saber at Obi-Wan, then blasted lightning into Dooku and smashed him into a pillar. Obi-Wan blocked the flying blade, and then he reset himself. Obi-Wan looked at Dooku, struggling to rise, as Sidious approached with his blade raised, and suddenly, he was back behind the red shields of Naboo, watching Maul prepare to kill Qui Gon. Once again, he stopped resisting. Obi-Wan reached into his fear, anger, and hatred, abandoning every thought of balance. He screamed out and tore stones from the courtyard walls, throwing them towards Sidious from every direction. Sidious destroyed several of them, but one of them struck his knee, and another cracked against his ribs. Obi-Wan rushed through the debris, knocked Sidious's blade aside, and drove his lightsaber through his stomach, defeating him like he defeated Maul, because Sidious underestimated the power of the dark side in Kenobi. Palpatine snarled, still alive, and he blasted lightning into Obi-Wan's body, but Kenobi let the pain fuel him, holding the blade inside of Sidious, until Dooku rose behind him and cut across Sidious's neck. Dooku fell to a knee, exhausted and injured, and he told Kenobi they have done well, but this is only the beginning. But Dooku did not realize what he had created, and Obi-Wan would reignite his saber, telling Dooku that his usefulness was at an end. And Obi-Wan stabbed through the heart of the weakened Dooku, leaving him here with Sidious, framing the scene to make it look like they killed each other. Obi-Wan felt he was better off on his own. And for the next month, the Republic would fall into chaos. Palpatine and Dooku were found dead next to the old Palpatine estate, and the evidence made it appear the former Jedi discovered the Chancellor was a Sith Lord before they killed each other in battle. Investigations in the Palpatine secret records proved his identity, and the Senate demanded answers from the Jedi Order that failed to see him and failed to rein in Dooku. Bail Organa formed an emergency council to hold the Republic together as systems threatened to leave, and through it all, Obi-Wan remained missing, with only Qui-Gon and Anakin knowing that he was with Dooku during this time. And Qui-Gon only now realized that he made a terrible mistake by allowing Obi-Wan to be with Dooku. And out across the stars, Obi-Wan had taken Dooku's Sith records and followed them to Lehon, a forgotten world where Sith history could be learned to him. Obi-Wan wanted to expand past Dooku and Sidious to the ancient Sith, and so he searched the old Rakatan Temple for Sith holocrons that could teach him how to build a new order. He no longer believed in balance. Dooku had been too weak to accept the full power of the dark side, but Obi-Wan was not. And on Coruscant, inside of the Jedi Temple, Anakin Skywalker had a vision of Obi-Wan standing before a ruined temple. Qui-Gon helped Anakin work through it until he knew which planet the vision came from. And finally, he too understood the depth of his mistake. He'd sent Obi-Wan to Sereno believing Dooku could save him, only to place him directly into the hands of the Sith. And Qui-Gon ordered Anakin to remain behind. Then, he departed for Lehon alone, determined to stop Obi-Wan. And on this world, Qui-Gon would enter the ruined Rakatan Temple, finding Obi-Wan standing before an open chamber filled with red holocrons. Obi-Wan felt Qui-Gon approaching, and he turned, red saber already in hand. Qui-Gon ignited his green blade and told Obi-Wan that he has failed him, but he can still come back from this. He sent Obi-Wan to Dooku because he was afraid of what the Council would think, and because he believed his old master could fix something that Qui-Gon should have faced himself. But Obi-Wan thanked his master for sending him down this path, and he attacked first, as Qui-Gon blocked, moved around the strike, and cut towards Obi-Wan's shoulder. But Kenobi twisted away and drove a kick into his chest. The duel moved out of the chamber and onto the temple's walkways, where rain was pouring down into the trees. The entrance was in ruins. As they moved through it, and Qui-Gon remained defensive, redirecting each blow and refusing to meet Obi-Wan's rage with his own. Obi-Wan tore sections of the temple apart with the Force, throwing broken pillars towards his former master. Qui-Gon cut through one, pushed another back, as Kenobi charged through it, through the falling debris. Qui-Gon told him that he'd been right about the Republic and the blindness of the Council, but the dark side had convinced him that being right gave him the authority to decide who deserved to live and die. Obi-Wan answered, blasting Qui-Gon backward and leaping after him, raising his blade for a killing strike, not wanting any more lectures. But Qui-Gon had seen the move forming. He rolled beneath Obi-Wan as he landed, cut through Obi-Wan's arm at the elbow, and Obi-Wan didn't even flinch. His lightsaber landed in his other remaining hand, and he swept the red saber across Qui-Gon's left eye. Qui-Gon yelled out in surprise, and Obi-Wan reached out, trying to crush Qui-Gon's throat. But Qui-Gon reached both hands out, grabbing the trees above them, ripping them down. A sharp branch plunged through Obi-Wan's back, and he was thrown to the ground. Qui-Gon stood above his wounded student, with a chance to finish it, but he deactivated his lightsaber. Obi-Wan asked why Qui-Gon would spare him after what he has become, and Qui-Gon told him that is the difference between them now. Obi-Wan used the dark side on Naboo because he could not accept losing him, but over time, that love of him became possession, ambition, hatred. Qui-Gon said he has failed him, but he can still be saved. And so, Obi-Wan was returned to Coruscant, alive and in cuffs, where he confessed to killing Dooku and helping destroy Sidious. The Republic survived beneath Bail Organa's temporary leadership, while the Jedi Council was forced to confront how its blindness helped create this disaster. Qui-Gon would never forget the fall of Obi-Wan. He realized that simply teaching Anakin to acknowledge his emotions was not enough. He needed to understand that fear and anger could not be treated like tools, because eventually, the tool will begin controlling the person using it. Qui-Gon told Anakin the full truth about Obi-Wan, Dooku, and how to avoid the same path. He did not hide his own responsibility or pretend that Obi-Wan fell alone. And as Anakin grew older, Qui-Gon taught him that the light did not require him to stop loving his mother or caring about the people around him. It required him to accept that even the most powerful Jedi could not force the galaxy to become exactly what they wanted. And through Obi-Wan's fall, Qui-Gon became a more honest master, and he helped the Council evolve for the betterment of the galaxy, while Anakin grew into a Jedi who understood the darkness without believing he needed to enter it. And over the years, Anakin regularly visited Obi-Wan inside of the secure prison beneath the Jedi Temple. At first, Obi-Wan refused to speak to him, sitting in silence, but Anakin continued returning, bringing him news of the rebuilding Republic, the reforms that Bail Organa was creating, and the changes spreading through the Jedi Order. Obi-Wan began to see that the galaxy was changing for the better without the Sith, and eventually, Obi-Wan admitted that saving Qui-Gon on Naboo had made him believe every action afterward could be justified by its results. He was lost when he began believing that only he could decide what was best for everyone else. And slowly, through years of patience, Obi-Wan did begin to feel the light again. He would never be the Jedi he once was. He could never erase who he became. But the darkness no longer controlled him or the Republic. And folks, that is our story for the day. This one was interesting. Whoa, alright, gather yourself. I've wanted to do a Dark Side Obi-Wan story for a long time, and I felt this was a good good place to do it. I think it's fun to do just, what if he used the dark side to save Qui-Gon, and I could have done a way that maybe Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan both stay in the light and train Anakin and eventually kill Sidious, but instead decided to just, I don't know, go all out. Haven't really done one where Obi-Wan turns to the dark in probably well over a year, so decided to embrace it, and I thought it made sense with him going to learn from Dooku after using the dark side, and yeah, had fun with this. Hope it was good to you. Appreciate you all. Yeah. That's about all I got. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.